Don't know if any of you have read that before. I'm seeing some nods. And The 12 Powers of Man by Charles and Cora Fillmore. And what struck me most was how naturally these unity teachings align with other philosophies like religious science. That spiritual principles they're universal, they're impersonal, always available to us. And whether we speak of divine mind, infinite intelligence, or God, the invitation is the same. We listen inwardly, we align our thinking with truth, and we allow that peace to unfold as a natural result. Charles Fillmore teaches us the still small voice of spirit speaks to us continually, but we must learn to listen. So today I want to focus on staying in the listening mode, especially when we're standing at an inner crossroads where the noise of the world is the loudest. I don't know if you've had some inner crossroads. I'm sure you have in your life, and I'll be reflecting on one that I've had in the not too recent past. So first we're going to look at that moment where we're frozen at a fork in the road. We're wanting peace, but we're not sure how to move forward. Second, we'll explore what Unity and Dr. Katie teach about the still small voice within and why we often miss it. And third, I'd like to look at 2 of the 12 powers, understanding and love, and how they guide us toward peace, sometimes toward forgiveness, and sometimes through acceptance, and sometimes through simply seeing more clearly. And finally, we'll come back to how peace actually arrives, not by a strong force, but by listening, choosing, and releasing. So there's a lyric that stayed with me for years from Dan Fogelberg, one of my favorite singers. My brother would call him one of those, it's a Joni guy. I really love Dan Fogelberg. Unfortunately, he passed away from us way too soon. But I had his album, and I mean album, that I play still on a record player. And his album was called The Netherlands. And there's a song that's the same title as the title of the album, called The Netherlands. And I'd like to read some of that lyric. Once in a vision, I came on some woods and stood at a fork in the road. My choices were clear, yet I froze with the fear of not knowing which way to go. One road was simple, acceptance of life. The other road offered sweet peace. So this distinction between 2 roads matters. When he refers to simple acceptance of life, it's the road where we tell ourselves, you know what, this is just the way it is. We accept our circumstances and we might remain internally bound. Sweet peace, however, the other road, is sometimes deeper. It's not resignation, it's not avoidance. It's the peace that comes from alignment, from listening within. And then Fogelberg goes on to say, when I made my decision, my vision became my release. And that single line contains a profound spiritual truth. Vision precedes release. So let me repeat those lyrics one more time, just so we can bring them into our consciousness. Once in a vision, I came on some woods and stood at a fork in the road. My choices were clear, yet I froze with the fear of not knowing which way to go. One road was simple, acceptance of life. The other road offered sweet peace. When I made my decision, my vision became my release. So Unity teaches, and Hebrew scriptures remind us, that guidance doesn't always arrive through thunder or lightning bolts or force, but through what is called the still small voice. But how do we tap into this voice? In Lessons in Truth, Dr. Katie teaches the importance of what she calls the secret place, this inner place of stillness, where we consciously turn away from outer noise and we listen within. She writes, when you're in the silence, you're consciously placing yourself in touch with God. In other words, when the mind can become quiet and receptive, divine guidance can be heard clearly. Dr. Katie teaches us, many of us want peace, but we skip the listening. We want answers, and sometimes even forgiveness, but we rush to conclusions. That still small voice does not compete with fear. It simply waits. It's subtle, it's calm, but it is persistent. And when we listen, something within us begins to soften. Many of us miss it, not because it isn't speaking, but because we're listening for something dramatic. I recently read the book, The Secret Life of Bees, for a book club. Has anybody ever read The Secret Life of Bees? I should probably give you a little bit about what it's about, because then what I'm going to quote from that book will make more sense. It's basically a 14-year-old girl that runs away from home, and she's accepted by these women. She's lost her mother. She's accepted by these wonderful women who happen to be a different race than she is, that take her into their home. They are actually, one of them is a beekeeper. And so she learns how to, care for bees. And she learns so many life lessons from these women. So in this book, the author, Sue Monk Kidd, expresses the inner truth of what we've just been talking about very beautifully. She says, you have to find a mother inside yourself. And it's because this poor girl, her mother had passed on, and she just needs to draw from someplace. Can we all do that? Can we trust that nurturing guidance presence within us that is very much like a mother? The still small voice that doesn't argue, doesn't rush, and doesn't shout, but gently leads us toward peace. And once we begin to trust that gentle inner guidance, something else becomes necessary. We have to become willing to quiet the mental noise that drowns it all out. Because the still small voice doesn't force its way in, we make space for it. So Dr. Katie teaches a concept that can sound not like what you would think it would be at first. She talks about denial. And when in Lessons in Truth, she defines denial as not pretending something doesn't exist, but denying its spiritual power. So denial is the conscious refusal to give spiritual power to fear, resentment, or the past. Think of denial as clearing static from a radio signal, okay? You're going to deny the power of old stories, the still small voice, then becomes much easier to hear. This is how we step off the road of simple acceptance and begin moving toward sweet peace. And when that inner static becomes clear, we don't become empty, we become available. Available to the spiritual capacities that have been with us all along, just waiting to be expressed. And when we hear that inner guidance more clearly, a new question naturally arises. How do we live from what we're hearing? So we're hearing that voice. How do we actually respond to that quiet wisdom within? The answer can be very practical. Unity teaches us that each of us is endowed with innate spiritual faculties called the 12 powers. From the book that I was reading, The 12 Powers of Man. Capacities already within us, meant to be consciously expressed. And two of these powers I'd like to talk about today that are especially important when we're seeking clarity and peace, when we're in the middle of life's crossroads. The first is understanding. In the 12 powers, Charles Fillmore defines understanding as giving us the ability to see things as they really are. Understanding lets us perceive spiritual truth beyond appearances. It's not trying to get intellectually analytical, it's more about illumination, illuminating what is already there. It's the moment the still small voice reframes the whole situation, and suddenly reaction softens, clarity rises, and we know that what is ours to carry and what we can release. The second power I want to talk about is love. And Fillmore provides this description. Love is the great harmonizing power which brings all things into divine order. Love restores unity where there's been separation, making release not just a choice, but a natural relief. It does not deny harm, but it does release us from carrying resentment as a burden. Understanding illuminates, love harmonizes, and together they prepare us for that inner peace. So I'd like to return once more to Dan Fogelberg's words, "When I made my decision, my vision became my release." That line can provide something pretty profound. Release doesn't come first, vision comes first. And when spiritual vision changes, our inner experience changes with it. So this is exactly where release enters the picture. And sometimes that release comes through forgiveness, other times it comes through understanding, healthy boundaries, or simply recognizing that a situation has completed itself. Together they create the inner shift that makes true release possible. Ernest Holmes writes in The Science of Mind, "Forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future." So forgiveness is one way the heart finds freedom, but it's not the only way. When vision shifts, something within us softens, and when we see more clearly, then we hold on less tightly. Dr. Katie teaches us that when we see from spiritual awareness, we give truth the final word instead of appearances. Our vision shifts, our response changes. Sometimes it's forgiveness, sometimes it's clarity, acceptance, or just peace. We listen inwardly. We deny, again that word deny, fear its authority, and understanding reveals what is real. Love does what love always does. It restores harmony. And that restoration is what we experience as peace. So up to this point, we've been talking, but I'd like to talk about my own personal experience that applies some of this in a pretty unique way. So there was a time in my career when I noticed a pattern beginning to emerge, and my friends noticed it as well. In my professional life, I used to stay with companies 5, 9, 15 years. But more recently, my tenure, I would say, with these organizations have been much shorter. And I was kind of wondering, what does that mean? And my friends wondered, what does that mean? At one point, I had been with a company for about 7 months, and I received some news that I, along with a coworker, let's just say we were not on a path of progression. The difficult part was the whole reason I left the company I'd been with for 4 years was to get growth, do development. I'm one of these people, I like to keep expanding. I'm a maximizer. When you talk about strength finders, I'm a maximizer. I like to make things better. So I had made my move intentionally, and I wanted to expand my work in project management, which is what I usually pursue. So I began applying elsewhere, and eventually an opportunity came up with a company that was connected to a company I used to work for. It was either merged or it was made part of that company, but it was in the same location, in the same building. A lot of things were still the same. And I thought, okay, that experience was not pleasant. Sue Monk Kidd writes in The Secret Life of Bees, "The hardest thing on earth is choosing what matters." So in that moment, I figured out what mattered. It was not comfort, it was growth. It was not being right, like, oh, I better stay, because otherwise I'm gonna look like I'm just kind of, picking other jobs again. It wasn't about being right, it was about being at peace. So I chose to become still and listen, and what I began to hear inwardly was not the fear of doing this again, but insight. I realized time had healed many of the wounds from my earlier experience, and this new role would not be the same environment. In fact, it was at least a decade later. I saw that reacting impulsively to disappointment in my current job was not the same as receiving guidance. So most importantly, I understood that I had to release the emotional charge around both workplaces, which is something that I'm still learning how to do. Not really wrong to me, but because I just needed to step back and gain some clarity. Let's see, this is where the spiritual powers of understanding and love became real. Understanding helped me look at the situation more objectively. Love allowed me to soften toward others, toward myself, forgiving whatever might still be hanging on, freeing my heart to move forward in peace. So with clearer vision, I could see that this was not a failure, but a divine mismatch. I just wasn't in the right place. A signal from the still small voice that my growth lay elsewhere. And so I accepted the new opportunity. And it did turn to be completely different from my previous experience. It was still in corporate America, which some of you I'm sure can relate. And even though I did move on from that role after about a year and 10 months, that role did give me more confidence, more skills, and it even gave me some self-trust that led me to what I now am in, which I consider my dream job. So what changed was not the outer situation, it was basically my willingness to listen. And when I did, peace arrived naturally. So there was a good outcome. And that is what unity teaches us again and again, that peace is not the result of perfect circumstances, but inner alignment. When we listen to that still small voice and when we allow understanding to illuminate our thinking and love to soften our hearts, our vision changes and our release follows. So let's come back to where we began. We started with that moment we all recognize, the fork in the road, frozen between fear and peace. And then we explored how that still small voice guides us away from fear. How denial clears that static so we can hear spiritual guidance more clearly. And we saw 2 of Unity's 12 powers, understanding and love, guide us toward peace. Sometimes through forgiveness, but always through deeper spiritual insight. And that spiritual vision then can lead to a decision, which leads to release, and then that release is where our peace resides. So I'd like to conclude by turning inward for prayer. In the stillness of this moment, we acknowledge the one presence, the one power, active in all of life. We recognize a wisdom within us, a still small voice, always guiding us toward peace. We consciously deny power to fear, to old stories, and to the belief that we must force our way forward alone on our own. We choose the path of inner willingness, allowing forgiveness where needed, wisdom where required, and healthy release where life is asking us to move on. We trust the vision that is unfolding with us now. We affirm that we are guided, we are supported, and that peace is not something we must chase, but something that rises naturally as we listen within. And so we rest in that presence that's been guiding us all along. We move forward gently, wisely, and in peace. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Joni. That was perfect for today and any day, really. I'm so excited, so delighted. You're invited to join me in joy. I'm so excited, so delighted. You're invited to join me in joy. It's rising up and I can't do nothing about it. It's rising up and I can't do nothing about it. It's rising up and I can't do nothing about it. It's rising up and I can't do nothing about it. Hey, I'm so excited, so delighted. You're invited to join me in joy. I'm so excited, so delighted. You're invited to join me in joy. excited, so delighted. You're invited to join me in joy.
That was very beautiful. Okay, a few thank yous and announcements. First of all, thank you, Joni. That was a wonderful message today. And thank you for our musicians, Carissa Holmes and Michael Contras. It was beautiful. We love your music. Thank you also, Michael, for handling the AV. You do double duty with your trusty sidekick over there, Lana. That's right. And of course, we want to thank the kind folks who provide today's refreshments. I think it was spearheaded by Barbie and Linda Hill, but a lot of people bring food, so thank you all. And finally, thanks to everybody who continues their ongoing support of our church with your tithes and gifts. We're very grateful. A few announcements to recap. The Unity Women's Lunch will gather Tuesday, February 3rd at Scramblers Restaurant. That's at 12:30. There's an empowering workshop coming up February 15th at 12 noon. Carissa Holmes will present EFT tapping for relief from stress and painful memories. And I'm sure you'll fill anybody in who has any questions about that today. In this workshop, you'll learn gentle, indirect methods to ease yourself out of anxiety and shift out of stress states. And there's a sign-up sheet in the back. During the Lenten season, we're offering another 5-week Bible study class that we've done in the past. This one will be exploring some Old Testament works, wisdom in the Bible, and this class will meet each Monday for 5 weeks, starting March 2nd at 1:30. There's also a sign-up sheet for that in the back. So I think that's it. Are there any other announcements? Anything? Okay, this is the first Sunday of the month, which means it's a special day. So who has a special day? Somebody. No birthdays? Anniversaries? We've got a shy group. Okay, but without anything special, we bless ourselves for a wonderful time we have. Let's get together and join the circle for our peace song.